And this week on Quality Digest Live, we'll talk with Rob McIvor of the CMS about the measurement zone at this year's Coordinate Metrology Systems Conference.
Plus, using multiple viewpoints to challenge the conventional point of view. That and more when we come back. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for May 22nd, 2015. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. Well, Wednesday was World Metrology Day, commemorating the anniversary of the signing by representatives of 17 nations of the Meter Convention in 1875. This treaty provides the basis for a coherent worldwide measurement system. So a meter is a meter is a meter, and a kilogram is a kilogram is a kilogram, no matter where you are, even on the International Space Station, or on the moon, or on Mars maybe someday. Well, this year, World Metrology Day is aligned with the International Year of Light and Light-Based Technologies. Metrology, or the science and application of measurement, as it is, plays a central role in enabling the application and advancement of light-based technologies. And what we're talking about here is things like more efficient energy production, or a better understanding of climate change, or even just more optimal lighting of our cities and towns. Now, events in 2015 will celebrate the central role of light to our lives, whether as a source of energy, or as the basis for photonic technologies, or as being a source of wonder and excitement. You know, lasers.
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 Who doesn't like lasers?
I like lasers.
I know you do.
Chicks dig lasers.
That's true.
Or so those photonics guys say, but
yeah.
I don't think they know what they're talking about. Now, the thing that was fascinating to me actually about this story, when I was kind of researching it, is if you visit the worldmetrologyday.org website and click on events, you're going to see a list of countries and the conferences and forums that they are hosting to discuss metrology issues all this week. So sure, you know, you would expect to see all the EU countries and countries like Australia and the United States and South American countries and et cetera. But you go through the list and you also see countries like Syria and Egypt and Tunisia, all countries that are currently or have recently been in turmoil. This is interesting. To me, it was interesting because I never thought about that. And we're going to talk about the idea later on of a single story, kind of our perception of things. And my perception of, let's say, Syria is that it's just a war-torn country. There's nothing there but rubble. It's nothing but, you know, religious factions fighting against it. And that's all there is to Syria. That's all Syria is, right? That's kind of my perception.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, there's scientists and engineers and the whole business climate, and Damascus is a modern city. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that the science of measurement and science in general is so important in the well-being of countries, even countries in the middle of strife, that it carries on. In the case of metrology, you can't have industry, even let's say military industry, without measurement. And so it was just fascinating to me. I mean, it was just totally unexpected. I'm going through this list, and Syria.
Yeah.
Egypt, Tunisia. It's like, yeah, I mean, life in the middle of strife, life in the middle of death goes on in terms of how do you support the infrastructure of a country. Metrology is a key part of that.
Yeah, and I mean archaeology too. I mean, we hear a lot about this in areas, and I didn't really know you were going to actually refer to it in this way, but it came to me as you're talking about it. I mean, you talk about what's going on right now in Palmyra in Syria, right, which is an ancient architectural site and archaeological site, I'm sorry. And you know, the scientists, the people that research this stuff are as concerned with preserving that culture as they are with preserving the lives of the people around it. Yeah. I mean, it is amazing that when you dedicate your life to science or research or knowledge, that becomes such an encompassing thing, regardless of what else is going on around you. And that is one of the many stories that you have to think about when you're thinking about a country like Syria or Egypt or any of these countries that they're in conflict. Really, really interesting stuff.
It is interesting.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, thank you for doing that, Dirk. Okay. Well, as Dirk just mentioned, earlier this week was World Metrology Day on the 20th, a couple days ago. And World Metrology Day always gives us the opportunity to honor the importance of the science of measurement, as well as the men and women who perform those measurements in industry. Well, when it comes to portable 3D metrology, no organization provides more support for users than our longstanding partners, the Coordinate Metrology Society. Their annual conference, the CMSC, is a gathering place for the metrologists, from experts to those new to the field. This year's CMSC takes place at the Diplomat Hotel in sunny Hollywood, Florida, July 20th through 24th.
Humid.
No, well, it'll be nice.
It'll be nice. It'll be nice.
I've been there many times in July in Florida, and it's actually very nice. It is a little warm, but it's nice.
But it's nice.
Yeah, you should.
And it's Hollywood.
You'll like
so
it. It's Hollywood. But there are a great many reasons to attend the CMSC, and there's dozens, for instance, of cutting-edge white paper presentations from leaders in industry and academia. There's a great exhibit hall where you can find the best hardware, software, and peripheral equipment in the industry. And right there in the hall is the measurement zone, which is a place of learning and hands-on testing, and it's a place where metrologists can pit their skills against their peers. So now, in the latest installment of our CMSC Corner segment, we're going to be joined by Rob McIvor of Boeing, who also happens to sit on the CMSC Education Committee. Rob's going to give us a little insight into what we can expect from this year's measurement zone at the CMSC. So, hello, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mike. Hi, Dirk. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Doing good.
Great.
Good. Thank you again for joining us, Rob. Well, the CMSC, of course, interesting group. We've been associated with you guys for a long time, and you've been active in the Coordinate Metrology Society for some time as well. Given your various roles within the group, not to mention your position in the industry with Boeing, how would you characterize the past and the current state of knowledge transfer for metrologists?
Okay. Well, way back in the dark ages, and for me that was 1979. Tool makers like myself, that's my job at Boeing. We spent a lot of time measuring using transits, levels, alignment telescopes, and if you'd mentioned the word metrology to any of us, myself included, back then, I probably would have said something similar to your bit last year about World Meteorology Day as opposed to Metrology Day. So all of our training back then was essentially given to us by the folks that have been there for the last 20 or 30 years. And so essentially we're just talking a system of on-the-job training. You were taught to operate the device, and that's about all you were taught to operate. So today, at least within our shops, laser trackers are our bread and butter go-to metrology devices. And the biggest difference there in terms of training is that the initial knowledge transfer that we want to get across to our measurement folks, our metrology folks, is going to be done via classroom training with good informational student guides, in other words, good formal training with good instructional materials. Today's laser trackers, today's devices, period, laser radar, PCMMs, all sorts of different types of scanners. They're way too complex, and the software was way too capable to just try to get the basics of how to use that equipment done in the old OJT system. So we encourage and we push very hard, at least at Boeing, the formal classroom training with good instructional materials, and then once they've finished up that initial part of their training, then they go out to the shop floor, and that's where the OJT, or the on-the-job training, pays a big dividend, working with people that have been there for a while and know the applications, know how to apply those devices to the stuff that we do.
Well, given all that, Rob, and given the nature of training and learning in the industry, the measurement zone really assists with that, I think, and I think that's really the reason why you guys have had that in the CMSC. So tell us a little bit about what we can expect from the measurement zone this year, and maybe what's new in the zone for 2015.
Okay, so it's a great question. Measurement zone's been around, actually, I believe this is its 5th year. I think the first year we did it was in 2010. So we've got 5 years and going strong and expanding every year. So this year the zone is divided up into 5 different areas. The first 4 are pretty much all education based. The zone 1 is going to be have a variety of things going on. One of which is there's going to be a Jeopardy-like quiz. I don't think you actually have to formulate your answer as a question, but it's going to be a Jeopardy-like quiz. every day. And the areas that the quiz or the Jeopardy-like game is going to cover include interpreting design documents and requirements, measurement device knowledge, pre-measurement planning, performing measurement operations, analyzing data, and ethics. These happen to be those 5 areas that tie in with the duty areas that the certification exams cover. So there's also, in that same Zone 1, there's going to be laser tracker workshops presented by Ben Hughes from NPL in England, or the UK. And there will be e-learning tablets there loaded with different types of instructional software. Zone 2 will cover blended learning. There'll be more e-tablets in Zone 2, and those are going to be loaded with training programs, including introduction to metrology, introduction to measurement uncertainty and dimensional measurement, including GD&T and measurement principles and methods. Zone 3, we're going to have at least three different pieces of equipment, and attendees will have an opportunity to go in there and operate that equipment using a scripted process. And there will be application engineers and observers to answer questions and take care of any difficulties that may occur with the equipment, or actually, things they might run into similar to what they might run into on a shop floor. So we'll have people there to provide some OJT, so to speak, on those measurement devices. Zone 4, we're going to have a FANUC robot in there, and the end effector on the robot will be a hexagon like a T-scan, and it will also be running a scripted process, and attendees are welcome to come by and work with that scripted process to operate that robot. And then, as similar to last year, we're going to have a measurement contest again. That's going to be in Zone 5. We're a little unsure exactly on what the object we're going to be measuring will be, but we'll have several different manufacturers, laser trackers in Zone 5. Attendees will be able to pre-register for the measurement competition, pick their laser tracker, and then on a measurement task, which is a timed event. And the person that will win the event is the person who comes up with the best data within that time period. So yeah, 5 zones this year. A lot of learning going on in Zones 1 through 4, and the competition in Zone 5.
So Rob, we're getting close to the end here. I want to wrap it up here and ask you a question about the information that's going to be gathered in the zone. So how does that information help improve the Society's Level 1 and Level 2 certifications? And also, how does the testing assist the user who might be preparing to sit for one of these proctored exams?
Sure. So the very first iteration of the measurement zone in 2010 showed that instruction or education and consistent processes and procedures really improves reliability and accuracy. Repeatability and accuracy. So the information that comes out of the measurement zone is information that the certification subcommittee takes a look at and says, well, here's some duty areas that seem to be a little bit weak. People consistently are making mistakes in this duty area. Other duty areas, they seem to be very strong, and so they can take that information from the measurement zone, and and initially for the Level 1, Level 2 certs, they were able to incorporate a lot of that information into the 5 duty areas that each certification exam cover, and create an exam that hopefully tested that person's knowledge so that he can come out and make that repeatable and accurate data. As far as preparing for the exam, the only thing specific to exam prep is if you can do this Jeopardy competition and you do a really good job, because if you think about the Jeopardy board, it's got the topics at the top and the money categories down below. The topics at the top of the Jeopardy board are going to be those 5 duty areas. If you do well in the Jeopardy competition, you're probably in pretty good shape in terms of sitting for either the Level 1 or the Level 2 exam. If you find that the categories are kind of over your head, or they covering knowledge that you don't have, it's probably time to go back out and get some more education, find some classes, get some books, and study up in those duty areas where you feel that you're weak before you sit down for that exam.
Okay, well, thanks, Rob. This is Rob McIvor, a toolmaker with Boeing up there in Washington, and also a member of the CMSC Education Committee. And we're going to be seeing you actually in just a few weeks there at the CMSC show in Hollywood.
Yeah, pretty soon. Well, thanks for the opportunity to come on and talk about the measurement zone.
Okay, happy Metrology Day.
Thanks,
hey,
Rob.
Same to you guys.
We'll see you soon.
See you, Rob.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, if you're at all involved in large-scale, portable 3D metrology, the CMSC basically is the only show here in the United States where all that comes together, along with some great talk. So
large volume, close tolerance, and those tolerances are getting closer and closer.
They're getting closer and closer, yeah.
All the time. So a really good show to check out if you're in that space.
That's right. Okay, Genshi Genbutsu. Go and see. That was the topic of Kevin Meyer's article this week, The Cure for Confirmation Bias Abroad or at Work. That was the name of it. Confirmation bias, of course, is the tendency to search for, interpret, or recall information in a way that confirms one's beliefs or hypothesis. Thank you, Mr. Wikipedia, for that. And we see it all the time. We practice it all the time. We tend to watch the news programs or read the newspapers or magazines that conform to or confirm our own beliefs. In discussions with others with dissenting opinions, we often listen in order to formulate a rebuttal, rather than listen to understand, because we're more interested in forwarding our own story than listening to somebody else's very often. And we're often afraid or uncomfortable with being exposed to ideas that challenge our own beliefs. We want a single story. We feel comfortable with a single story. That story being ours, of course. And this just isn't in our personal life. It's at work as well. I mean, although it takes a slightly different form. I mean, how often have you come across a salesperson or engineer who can't grasp that a product isn't meeting a customer's needs, or is befuddled that the customer is misusing the product? During development, it's not uncommon for developers or salespeople and so forth to support each other's ideas in terms of how a product is going to be used. They hold a single story, as it were, on what this product should be used for or how it should be used. And of course, the further development goes, the more difficult it is to challenge that story, even faced with customer feedback, which is really a different story. And sometimes we're so locked into our own development or our own ideas on a product, or I should say, it's not just products. The same goes for management views of, let's say, shop floor work, or vice versa. Shop floor's workers on what management does. We get locked into an idea, a story, a viewpoint of how something is supposed to work, how it's supposed to go, how it's supposed to be used, and it's really hard to shake those ideas, much to our detriment. Mm-hmm. Now, embedded in Kevin Meyer's article is a TED Talk video by Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Adichie. And I encourage you to watch it. It is really an incredibly powerful and thought-provoking description about the danger and the power of having a single story. Now, she's referring to having a single story, let's call it confirmation bias, in personal beliefs, but again, her ideas hold true in business as well. A single story tends to steamroll over people and innovation. It keeps you from going outside the box, and I would argue that in the end it just flattens the box that you're in. It makes customers and suppliers and employees two-dimensional, cartoon-like. That's the problem with a single story, is everything is reduced to a caricature or a cartoon, instead of recognizing and acknowledging the complexity of all of us, the complexity of employees, the complexity of managers, the complexity of customers. They're not two-dimensional. It's only by at least listening to other stories that we understand the complexity of how a product will be perceived or used, or how our instructions will be used by our assembly workers or our call center people or other frontline employees. How do you do that? How do you get more than a single story? How do you address this confirmation bias? Well, as Meyer says, Genshi Genbutsu. Go and see. Go to the shop floor. Go to your customers, engage with other engineers or salespeople or what have you who may have different ideas than you do. You don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you do have to listen to them, and not listen with an ear towards rebuttal or how can I make this all look better, but with an ear towards what are they really saying and what does this have to say about my product, my process, the way I manage. As you begin to get a feel for the other story, not only do you develop a richness of understanding, but your product or service becomes richer, more nuanced, more in tune with its true purpose. And that true purpose, obviously, is the way the customer wants to use it. As you gather more stories, you come closer to working with your employees to develop better processes, better procedures, and yes, even a better work environment. Adichie ends her TED Talk with this, and I think it applies to the workplace as much as anywhere else. She says, quote, "When we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place, we regain a kind of paradise." Pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty rich.
That's pretty cool.
So that's the idea. Is and it's something we all do. We do it in our personal lives. We do it in our work lives. We don't listen to what's really going on.
Or see.
Yeah.
And all the senses that are involved with that. I mean, to me, what I thought about when you were saying that is those little visual games you see on the newspapers, where you see it and it just looks like a bunch of static on the page.
Right.
When you stare at it and you let your eyes go through it, you begin to see the picture that emerges from that. To me, that's the analogy I thought about. Is you need to let that relax. You need to stop thinking so much about what you need, what I want to see happen, and just relax. Let your eyes ease into it.
It's good, and let as somebody who maybe it might be Trip Babbitt. Let the process tell you what you need to do.
Well, which is not what happens.
Right.
Which is not what happens most of the time, but it is what should happen. And I don't want to be cultural about this, but Americans don't do a good job of that.
Yeah.
I mean, the Japanese, I think, tend to culturally do a better job of that than we do. I mean, you look at how Americans travel. I'm going on a trip next week. It's like, what do we look for? We look for McDonald's and Holiday Inns, right?
Starbucks.
Starbucks, right?
Set.
I mean, it's like, It's like, well, that's not getting another story. I mean, a Starbucks in Belgium is a Starbucks. I mean, it's like there's plenty of places to go in Belgium other than a Starbucks, or in Nigeria, or wherever you're going to be. Maybe you don't want to go to Nigeria, but I mean, anywhere around the world, you can find your comfort level, but you're going to get a much richer, more nuanced experience, like you say, going outside of that. And I mean, the other thing is that you just don't have the opportunity often to do that. So when it does come, you have to take advantage of it, right? Yeah, if you have that opportunity. So really good stuff there by Kevin Meyer. He always writes very deep.
By the way, watch that video that's embedded in there. It's really awesome.
And a good video as well. Check that out. Okay, well, Change and Risk-Based Thinking by Bill Levinson is our next story, and it appeared in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. You can see it right there. Bill, of course, is one of our frequent columnists. We get a lot of work from Bill. He talks to us and our readers a lot. Well, this is an interesting question he's asking here, because the question he's asking is really, is change itself inherently risky? Is the process of making changes going to cause risk in your organization? Well, sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Levinson gives several scenarios in this piece from industries where he uses scenarios where the change has been a problem, right? I mean, things like chemical engineering or food production, of course, automobile manufacturing. I mean, what would a Bill Levinson story be without at least a passing reference to the Ford Motor Company and Henry Ford? I mean, I don't think I think legally he has to mention Ford every time he writes an article. But so he has all these examples from these industries, these various industries, where he takes scenarios where things were changed to the detriment of the customer or the process or whatever it may be, and of course that happens, right? We know that happens. And the common link that he mentions in the article, which really ties it all together, is this theme of unintended consequences. The unintended consequences of doing something that you assume is going to make things better, and it makes things worse because you didn't factor in that whatever it was. Maybe you didn't think about the risks going in and manage them as well as you could. Well, no one changes components or processes or partners intending to make things worse. You make those changes because you want things to be better. But if those changes aren't, again, properly managed and you don't understand the risks and address them, well, problems can and probably are going to arise, I think, pretty easily. Although Levinson, this is what he's talking about. I thought about it from a slightly different perspective, a little different spin on it. And although he doesn't address this particular point, in my opinion, The failure to change is every bit as risky, probably more risky than change itself and the process of changing. I mean, he talks about how change is risky. Well, if you don't change, that's even more risky, in my opinion. I mean, if you think about it, without change, right, there's no betterment, there's no improvement, right? Stasis, I should say, is never an option for organizations that are on a journey of true continuous improvement. You can't stay where you are. That's the antithesis of what continuous improvement is. You all the time are looking to improve and to change. Right. So if you don't have that mindset that you're going to be willing to change and you're going to try to change and make things better, well, you're not going to ever move at all. Levinson, as I talked about it earlier, of course, always references Ford, but when I was thinking about this piece, I thought about Toyota. I thought about the Toyota Motor Company and the Toyota production system. One of the great insights of Taiichi Ohno's TPS, Toyota production system, is that everything must flow. You know, he was very big on looking at flow and flow within a process. And to flow, things must move. And if they're going to move, that they must improve, or else you're not going to do them, obviously, right? All that means that situations are going to change. I mean, you can't have flow in a process if things don't change. If things are in stasis, there's no flow, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to do anything productively. And the other thing about that is people must adapt to change in real time within the flow. I mean, that was another one of the great insights of Toyota production system is respect for people. You know, so this isn't a tool set. This isn't a series of tools. Right. It's a philosophy about people are respected. And people aren't respected just to respect them. They're respected because they know things. They know things about your process and they can improve it in real time as things are actually happening. That's really, really important. But again, if you're not going to be willing to change, if you're not going to have flow, then that's not going to work, right? I think the risks that change are going to make things worse can't prevent you from making changes. You know, in my opinion, you can't do that because it just means that you need to manage the change properly. Again, you have to go into the change and say, all right, we're going to do things. We're going to maybe change suppliers, or we're going to maybe change the product we produce, or the way we produce, or whatever it is. We're going to do that because it's going to make us better. But if you don't, and if you're afraid, and if you're too caught up in the risks of that, again, you're never going to get anywhere. I think that's what I think Bill is saying that.
Right.
But he's also saying that mind it very carefully, because when you do change, it's a delta point where risk is very high, and you need to understand what you're really doing before you make it.
Right, and there's also the danger of change for change's sake.
Right.
I mean, everybody wants to keep moving forward. Everybody wants to keep improving their product, but sometimes you've got to understand why you're making the change, and is the change really necessary? And sometimes it isn't.
It isn't.
A lot of times, I mean, we see it all the time. People decide to make a product improvement even when maybe the market isn't really calling for it.
Yeah.
And there's also the issue of what is your story? You know, I mean, and we talked about it last week, the idea of the new Coke. Mm-hmm. Right? Well, did they really need a new Coke? I think part of what was going on is, well, there's some competition. You know, we've got Pepsi. You know, we've got to do something. Well, did they really need to do something? Well, obviously not, because after their new Coke failed, they went back, and it failed because of a flawed experiment.
Right.
But the fact is, they ended up back with Coke, and did Coke go out of business? No. I mean, so it brings to light the whole question of, did they need that change even to begin with?
Yeah.
Or was it just a perception that, well, we've got to stay ahead of Pepsi?
Shuffle the deck.
Yeah.
Shuffle the deck chairs.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that happens. That happens all the time. I think the biggest danger to me is when it deals with suppliers. You know, if you have a supplier where you're comfortable and the process works, you're going to want to keep that supplier. I mean, many times people make change for price, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, to me, not a great reason to change. Deming warned against that. And, you know, I don't think that change for change's sake ever makes sense. It may work out sometimes,
right,
but going into it, again, the risks of that outweigh the benefits you're probably going to get from it,
exactly,
in my opinion.
All right, well, we're about to wrap up here, but before we go, we want to do the tweet of the week. Mm-hmm. And this one comes from Twitter user David Gwynn. Note to self, don't think too much. You'll create a problem that wasn't even there in the first place.
Boy, that really ties in, doesn't it? Don't make a change.
Don't, like, you know.
Just because, you know.
Don't overthink it.
That's right. Don't overthink it. Well, that's our show. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Rob McIvor, for being on the show with us as well. We want to wish all of you a great Memorial Day here on Monday. I'm actually out of here next week, Dirk. I'm on the road. I'm not here all next week. Dirk's going to have some great interviews for you next week on the show. So he'll keep you entertained and educated in my state.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Alaska.
Alaska.
Yes, I'll be going on a cruise to Alaska. So that'll
Nice.
be very nice. So I look forward to that.
Well, have a good time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you all, or I'll see you all next Friday. So long.
Have a good weekend. Bye.